Syed Ishtiyaq Rizvi, and I'm the responsible officer with the General Medical Council as far as the revalidation is concerned. We are very fortunate to have Joe Wren, who is representing the General Medical Council, Dr. Steve Wilkinson from the University of East Anglia. We have also got Mr. Brian Burgess, who is a consultant in emergency medicine at Queen's in Romford, and Ms. Alia Ahmed, who is a consultant in emergency medicine based at Basildon Hospital. So thank you very much for coming along. I'll be giving a brief overview, and then I'll pass on to Joe. So let's make a formal start. There are different types of appraisals, and the one we are interested in and connected to is the one which is for the doctors, and this is the performance appraisal. What that means is that as doctors, whatever we practice, our performance is monitored, and there needs to be a way of finding out as to who is performing in what way and at what level. And this is something which is expected of the employers as to how this can be achieved. It is part of the career development, and as you know, this is an ongoing process which starts as soon as we are registered with the GMC for the first time, and the employers are interested in getting regular reviews, and they want to know that the doctor who is working for them is a safe doctor. So who needs the revalidation? Every doctor who is fully registered with a license to practice, now that it has been in place, which is that the revalidation dates have already been allocated, so it is the responsibility of all the doctors to engage with the General Medical Council, have their appraisals in place so they get ready to be revalidated. Revalidation itself is a process by which all licensed doctors are required to demonstrate on a regular basis that they are up to date with the knowledge, the skills, and they are fit to practice medicine. Revalidation, as mentioned earlier on, has already started, and it is expected that the majority of the licensed doctors in the UK will be revalidated for the first time by March of 2016. When will you be revalidated? Now, the way it works is that the GMC will inform you of your revalidation date, so you would have received that date by now. So that gives you some idea as to how you need to work towards that deadline. Your first revalidation will be sometime between April 2013 and March 2016. So all those doctors who are registered with a license to practice are in the process of getting their dates. So you will have a fairly good idea as to where we are. On that, if I can briefly mention that how do you get this information? Some basic things those who are well into this process would already be aware of, but you need to register with the GMC and create your own account. And that is an online resource that needs to be used. It is unique in the sense that it will be your GMC registration number which will form the basis of creating that account, and you will have your own password whereby you will be able to gain access, and that will give you the information as to who your designated body would be, who are you connected with. As local doctors, the majority of us would be with as we are working capital care services, so that would be the designated body, and then you need to upload whatever information happens as we go along. For locum doctors, the designated body will be the organization with whom you spend most of your time working. So, for example, if you're registered with Capital Care Services and you are spending most of your time working with us as a locum doctor, then this would be your designated body. How often will the checks take place? The revalidation cycle itself is for a 5-year period. So once you get revalidated, you will have your license to practice for the next 5 years till the next cycle is due. During that period, obviously, you will be undergoing regular appraisals, and appraisals are on a yearly basis. What information would the doctors have to provide? And these are some of the domains which are as per the General Medical Council guideline. CPD is very important in the sense that you need to have a combination of internal as well as external points. That is, all the conferences that you might have attended, the within the hospital, the trust you would have. Capital Care itself has the facility of running in-house courses, which are the basic life support and also different others which form part of the national service framework that we are on as part of the government procurement service. So we run, like, for example, infection control, COSH, RIDOR, health and safety, and there are a number of those. So those are available online, and the placement consultants and the locum division manager can point you in that direction. We also have an in-house compliance team which can help you to achieve those. Quality improvement activities, and this is taking part in various audits that you perform as part of your locum assignments, long-term or short-term, whatever. You can, and you would be directly involved with it. You can start a project yourself, or you can form part of an ongoing audit, or you can re-audit. So that those quality improvement things are the ones that the appraiser will be looking at. Significant events, which is SUIs, as we call that, serious untoward incidents. So whether it was a miss, a near miss, these are very clearly being logged by all the trusts that the doctors are working in. And if you are involved in any of those, you need to keep a log of that yourself and provide that information when you are appearing for your appraiser. Feedback from colleagues, more of the details will be following later, but that is where the 360-degree or MSF, which is the multi-source feedback, comes. So you need to nominate your colleagues, and for that my advice would be to spread it right across. Instead of just mentioning the colleagues whom you think would be reliable, would be able to give you a good reference, do not rely on that alone. And my personal practice for getting appraisal and preparing for the revalidation is to get that information from right across. So, for example, in a hospital setting, it would be a couple of colleagues who would be senior to you, a few who would be junior to you, then it would be your clinic nurse, your operating theater nurse. If you're in a cath lab, the person who is with you, assisting you, would be one. In fact, I go down, even starting from the top up to the bottom and everyone in between. So it would not be unusual to ask a cleaner, a porter, a receptionist, your own secretary, or a secretary who runs the department, or a nurse who does the clinic for you. So make it as objective as you can, and that really improves and increases the chances of getting a more objective information as to what your own profile is. Now, feedback from patients, where the NHS has been struggling as well, but it is getting better now, and there are tools and resources available for getting that information. I'll come to that on one of the next slides. Reviewing of complaints and compliments. So if you receive a thank you email, a card, or a box of chocolate with a little note, please do keep that. That will form part of what you have been doing good. And if someone does complain about you, then it would be time to reflect as to how things could have been done better. What have you learned from those? Because this is what is important in improving your own self, your performance, and making things easier and providing the highest possible service to your patients. So who is the responsible officer? It can be a licensed doctor with at least 5 years experience and has been nominated by a designated body. The responsible officer makes the final recommendation to the GMC when it comes to revalidating doctors. At Capital Care Services, I happen to be your responsible officer, and I can assure you that I have undergone quite rigorous training and passed all which is required to be a responsible officer. And a revalidation support team has been very helpful, which has been providing that. The GMC with whom I have to communicate, and you would be as connected doctor and we as designated body. So what is the correlation between appraisal and revalidation? All doctors should be participating in annual appraisal with GMP is the Good Medical Practice Guide, and that forms the focus on which the appraisal will be based, and then it will lead on to the revalidation. And this should cover all of their medical practice. On that, if I can just expand a little bit, that it is not just the hospital medicine where you would be practicing most of your time, but if you are doing any additional work in any shape or form, for example, you are doing some charitable work, where your role as the doctor remains, and you have declared that you're working in the capacity of a doctor, then all of that evidence needs to be provided and forms part of this appraisal and revalidation process. Even if you are doing some charitable, voluntary work, going through a scouts group or a brownies or a girl guide, and sitting on the board or being a member of a pharmaceutical industry where you provide medical advice on any matters whatsoever it is related to, and being on the safe side, it's best to declare, because it won't do any harm, but it would help you in getting all your portfolio completed. Examples of the multi-source feedback can be gathered are, as I mentioned earlier on, is you can have that from the outpatients clinic. The General Medical Council also provides that information on their website, whereby you can download the sample forms, the template. We will help you to provide that as well if you need that. Similarly, when you have been on call, the nursing staff on the ward can provide you with that. If you have had any ward duties, and whoever is there, they can provide you with those. You can give it to a nurse before starting your outpatients clinic. They will anonymously collect those and then send it off to your appraiser for evaluating what the responses are on those. Some of the other ones are, if you can get registered on, is iwantgreatcare.org. This was by Richard Bacon, who started off the doctors.net website, and I was checking on that only last night. It gives the information as to how to get the feedback, and that again is an anonymous way. So you provide them with a card, and that gives the address of the email address whereby the patients can anonymously give the feedback, and that will form part of your portfolio when you are appearing for your appraisal and also leading on to the revalidation. At Capital Care Services, we are linked to Clarity. This is an appraisal toolkit, and all the appraisals which have been performed up till now by a group of appraisers for Capital Care, they all need to get registered with Clarity, and it is an online tool, so you can upload practically all your documents there, and where the dialogue gets opened with your appraiser, who would have the information that their names would already be there along with the GMC registration number. So it's a kind of two-way process which it starts till you have a firm date allocated as part of the appraisal process. And up till now, it is working pretty well. So thank you very much for listening, and if there are any questions, we'll have a panel discussion a bit later. So please make a note of the questions, and then when we proceed on to the panel discussion, I'll be more than happy to answer along with my colleagues. So thank you very much for that. I'll pass you on to Jo.
So I'm Jo, I'm from the General Medical Council. I'm what's called a regional liaison advisor at the GMC. So basically it's my job to travel around my region, which is the East of England and Thames Valley, talking to groups of doctors like yourselves about anything that they want to hear about really in connection with the GMC. So we tend to do stuff like this on revalidation because obviously it's quite a big issue for people at the moment, and we also go out and talk about guidance and also take feedback back. So if there's things that we're doing that are particularly annoying or particularly wrong, hitting the wrong mark, then I'm here to kind of listen and to take that back and feed that back. So please feel free, but let me put my flak jacket on first of all. So there's a team of us across England. So wherever you are across England, you'll have a regional liaison advisor who's there to help and support you. You can find us on the website. You've got our email contact details on there. So please do feel free to catch up with us at any point in time. So I'm just going to talk really briefly about revalidation, and just very quickly, because I think actually the useful part of it and the bit that's relevant for you guys is your appraisal, because that's what actually matters. That's where you'll be having the direct input into your revalidation. So really, just a tiny little bit about the history of it. I think most people tend to think that revalidation has arisen because of shipment, and that's not actually the case. We started talking about revalidation in the 1970s, but at that point in time, we just couldn't work out how to get it to happen. How would we keep track of what doctors were doing in their day-to-day practice, which is actually what revalidation is about, is trying to understand how doctors are working day to day. So that's where the link with appraisal came in. That's where the link with clinical governance and employers came in, that actually through your peers understanding what you're doing day to day, then we can be reassured that you're staying up to date and fit to practice. So really, the whole point of it is to bring all doctors into a governance system. And I think to illustrate that, when we started this, there were doctors on our register who were 94 years old and were still able to prescribe. Now, that's not to say that they can't prescribe, but I strongly suspect they haven't been doing regular CPD. They're not engaged in feedback. They perhaps aren't keeping themselves as up to date as you would hope to. So part of revalidation is making sure that every doctor who's on the register and able to practice is working in a way that other people know what's going on with them. It's about helping you reflect on your practice and helping you to understand how the impact you're having on your patients and the impact perhaps your patients are having on you. It's about helping you prove that you're practicing in line with good medical practice, and that's why we've worked really hard with employers so that your appraisal is matched against the domains of good medical practice, and that you're able to prove that you are practicing in line with that as is expected of you. It's about addressing concerns before they become problems, and I think this is perhaps the big area that's not perhaps as well understood as it might be. In an ideal world, problems will be identified, discussed at an appraisal and dealt with, and it will never come to us. And that's what we're hoping through the adoption of appraisal, people becoming more aware of what other people are doing, that people will become more comfortable discussing concerns they might have, comfortable discussing any problems they're going through with their appraisers. There's this new sort of supportive system that's springing up that we hope revalidation is driving through. And finally, also working with ROs. ROs, responsible officers, have a statutory obligation to tell us that they're happy that their doctors are practicing in line with good medical practice, and revalidation is the way for them to do that. So that's kind of the background to it and why we're doing it, the drivers behind it, all that sort of thing. I won't go into this in any detail because it's obviously already been covered, but these are the elements of what we are looking for through an annual appraisal on your whole practice. I think the things I would particularly sort of highlight here really, CPD, what we're looking for with CPD is that what you're doing is of good quality and is relevant to your practice. So it's not just doing things that are interesting, but also things that you know are useful for your patients and for your employer. So through the job planning process, you're identifying CPD that's useful and relevant to the area that you're working in. I think that's probably all I'd really highlight there. Patient feedback, colleague feedback is already been covered. You know, you can do that through the Clarity Toolkit as well. So that's probably the newest area of this that we've introduced. Complaints and compliments. I know there are sometimes issues around how you collect these. One example I heard was somebody who collected the labels from the whiskey bottles they were given every Christmas. Whatever works, quite frankly. There is guidance on our website which is just being updated at the moment, which is why I wasn't able to bring printed copies along, but you can have a look at the two sort of booklets that are appeared in the boxes there are the most up-to-date information as to exactly the type of thing that we're saying that you can bring along in line with good medical practice. So we've gone through all the domains and we said for this you might like to provide this. So that's where we get really very specific. I think probably reflection is the trickiest area that we're finding, and I know that Stephen's going to be talking about this later on. I think that reflection is quite new for a lot of doctors. How do you reflect on your practice? One way that I'd heard was the what, so what, now what way of doing it, which I thought was quite nice. So what happened? So what? Why was it important? Now what? What are you going to do about it? You know, there are various ways of approaching reflection, but this is really the core of everything that we're doing. So if you're doing CPD, reflect on it. Why are you doing it? Why is it important? If you've had a complaint, reflect on it. What impact has it had? Have you made any changes? So the idea of just reflecting on your practice is probably the newest thing that Revalidation is trying to drive, and I think this is where we're going to be focusing a lot of our energy over sort of the next few months and years, is trying to drive through this reflective practice, which is becoming more standard as doctors are coming up through the system. And on the basis of that recommendation, we'll then make a decision. The time span between them making a recommendation to us and us making a decision is around about 24, 48 hours. The reason for that, just that small delay, is that we simply do a quick check within our system to see whether we've got any additional information about the doctor. So, for example, has a complaint come in the last 12 hours? It's very unusual for us to disagree with the responsible officer's decision, because usually they know everything. So we're looking to get 230,000 doctors through the system by 2016. We're on target at the moment, and I'll show you some stats in a minute. But just to be clear on the things that are going to be available, the responsible officer can say that they're happy with the doctor, happy with the appraisal, all those types of things, and just make a positive revalidation recommendation. And that's what's happening in the majority of cases. They can also make a deferral request, and what that means is that they are unable at that particular point in time to make a decision about the doctor, so they'd like some extra time to get to that point. It may be because the doctor's on a career break, it may be because there's been some problems with the appraisal that are just being sorted out, it may be because the doctor's overseas for a while or out of work and is not able to sort of keep themselves up to date. For whatever reason, your licensed practice will remain in place, you'll know about the time delay, we'll agree the time delay, and things will kind of progress through. But it's not a public thing, it's not a fitness to practice thing, it's just something, it's simply part of the system. It's simply saying we can't make the decision right now, so we're going to defer it for a set period of time. The more important and the more serious outcome is failure to engage, and this is where the responsible officer tells us that despite being given every opportunity, the doctor hasn't engaged in the process. They haven't done their appraisals, haven't done the things that are expected within the appraisal, just haven't engaged. And the outcome of that is we will obviously talk to the responsible officer to find out a little bit more about what's gone on. We'll talk to the doctor to try and understand what the problems are. But if things can't be resolved, then we need to take the doctor's licence away because they're not staying up to date and fit to practice in line with revalidation. So that is the more serious outcome. It's not a fitness to practice outcome. It doesn't go to a hearing. It's an administrative thing in the same way that we can remove a licence if a doctor doesn't keep their address up to date with us. So there's no option here to say I've got concerns about the doctor's fitness to practice, because that's not part of revalidation, that's just part of the normal governance process. So at the moment we've got 240,000 doctors who are subject to revalidation. We expect 10,000 of those to drop off through the process. Maybe they're retired, they don't need a license to practice anymore. At the end of last year we had 25,000 revalidated. We've now over 30,000 doctors revalidated. We've now got about 6,000 doctors deferred. And we've had about 20 non-engagement notifications with about 5 licenses removed so far from doctors who are not engaging in the process. So that's where we are with regards to stats. It's going as far as we're concerned. The feedback that we're getting is that actually doctors are finding it a lot easier than they thought was going to be happening. A lot of doctors thought, for example, they were going to have to come to the GMC and have a meeting with us and have a discussion about their process. And they're finding actually the process of just having their annual appraisals, and that's all they need to do, seems to be going down quite well. There is a very, very full section on our website where you can go and get more information. We've broken it down by type of doctor so you can understand particularly how you were affected. You can give us a ring. We've got a specialist call centre up in Manchester who only deal with revalidation inquiries from doctors, so they'd be really happy to help you if there's anything that you need from us. But that's it for me. Just a quick canter through, basically, because I think actually the reflection stuff is probably the more important bits. But I'm very, very happy to take questions afterwards.
That I think will help you think into your own appraisal. So I'm working from the assumption that everyone in the room here is going to go through an appraisal. If that doesn't apply to you, then can you pretend for the next 2 hours, please? Because I haven't got an alternative role for you. Okay. Now, in your pack, you'll find 2 sets of notes that I've prepared for an interactive session, which I'm about to run. If I had a pack, I'd be able to show you what one it looked like exactly. Oh, I am going to have a pack. I wonder if there's a spare one for Joanne so she can correct me on the detail. Okay, the first document I'd like you to look at is the one called Reflection. It's written like an academic paper. It's not intended to be an academic paper. What I've been doing is working with responsible officers at regional meetings, and I've been asking them what their concerns are about the appraisals that they've been seeing. Hand in hand with this, organisations, and this organisation will be no different, are required to undertake a quality assurance of their appraisal system. So this is not just, are people attending the appraisal? It gets down to the detail of what is the quality of what's going on. I think if you were to think of this from a company perspective, if this were a business, for example, and you were being asked as a business to invest this huge amount into this process called appraisal, I, as a shareholder, will be asking the question, what are we getting back from that investment? You don't want to just plough millions into something because it's a good idea. You want to know that there's a benefit to it. And the only way we can see the benefit is through the actual act of appraisal itself. And where it is most evident is where doctors have reflected. Now, I've undertaken quality assurance for about 8 organisations now, and that's involved looking at all of the appraisal documentation that's been submitted. I've read maybe 2,500 folders. I know, my psychiatrist and I are working through it. We have a system in place. I've got somewhere I can go and have some quiet time. But the important thing is that when I look through this, without doubt, the problem is reflection. Now, I don't for 1 second believe that as a doctor you do not reflect. It would have to be incumbent upon you to reflect. It would have to be part of what it is you do as a professional person. It's part of what any professional person does. It's part of what I do as an educational researcher. I have to reflect. I have to go away from today and say, could I have done something differently? Could I have done something better? And I'll get the feedback from the session. And based on that, I'll work out what it is I need to do differently next time. You would do that in every aspect of the medical work that you undertake. But the problem is, you do it up here. You do it conceptually. And you make the changes practically. And it's invisible. We can't see it. We can't see that it's taken place. Incumbent upon an effective appraisal is the need to demonstrate that process of reflection so that you can demonstrate externally that you are up to date and fit to practice because you go through this process. So the problem isn't whether you reflect, it's whether you reflect overtly, whether you reflect so someone else can see it. Now, one of the roles that I have is to train appraisers. And I've asked appraisers to tell me what it is that they look for in reflection. And as a result of that, I've come up with this very simple model. It's a rubric, and it's something that appraisers can use at a glance to tell whether the reflection has sufficient quality. Now, the rubric you'll see on the second page, it simply follows the basic idea that Joanne spoke about before, applied to the domains. You'll see the square at the bottom. Let's take the first domain as an example, knowledge, skills and performance. Okay, so if you were to take this to the first level of reflection, you would discuss how the supporting information in your portfolio demonstrates performance and skills maintenance. If you were to take it to the next level of connections, you would be showing how that performance and CPD meets the standards that you are asked to meet in your practice. If you were to take it to the third level and the satisfactory level, the level that we want you to take it to, you would be looking at extending that to say, well, here are some suggested approaches to developing, maintaining performance and skills based on that experience. Let me put it in a more simpler term. Let's take today, for example. You've attended today and you will be given a certificate of 3 CPD points. I know, I'm looking around. There's a bit of excitement now. Yeah, a bit of excitement in the room now because this is an externally delivered training session. So you will have those 3 CPD points. Now, it will go into your portfolio and you will decide whether this is something that you want to talk about at your appraisal. If you were to talk about it, you could say, I went to this fantastic meeting and I met these brilliant people. Or you could say, I went to this fantastic meeting, met these brilliant people, and I learned about what I needed to do to produce an effective appraisal. Or you could say, I went to this fantastic meeting, met these brilliant people, learned about what I could do for effective appraisal, and this is what I've done as a consequence. And here's an example of the sorts of things that I'm now writing that is a higher level of reflection. That's what we want to see. Now, that's the theory. Let's see if we can apply the practice. I've got an exercise for you because I knew you wouldn't want to just listen to my voice. I know you want to actually do something this afternoon. So here's the exercise. Inside the next 3-4 pages, I have an extract from appraisal submissions, the reflection page from appraisals. Now these are actual documents that belong to people. So can I ask that they not be provided, stuck on the notice board, copied, put on YouTube, or any other indiscretion, because I only have permission to use these in a training context. Okay, they are actually somebody's work. They own it. I don't. So I have their permission to use this to provide this exercise. What you've got is one page taken from the appraisal documentation. Now, I've used the MAG, the Medical Appraisal Guide, as a generic format for the reflection that you're asked to use. You're using Clarity. On Clarity, there will be a page to say, please reflect on the supporting information. I'm not sure what page number that is. For the sake of the argument, let's call it page 18, and then it'll be the same as what you've got here. Section 18. So you've got all your supporting information. Here are the domains. Here's your reflection against that information. Now, we've got 3 examples here. We've got Dr. She. I changed her name just to protect her, but she's obs-gynae, so it was obvious that it was a she. I've got Dr. Genome. Again, I've changed her name. She's a microbiologist. And I've got Dr. Andy. Do you see what I did there? Andy. I know. I do all my own writing. So, you can tell. So here's the exercise. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to read those 3 sets of reflective comments. Now, I haven't chosen them because they are particularly excellent. I've chosen them because they are typical. They are all flawed in their own way, and they could all be written a lot better. But what I want you to do is to see if you can apply the rubric to those 3 examples. And the way I'd like you to do this is I'd like you to have a conversation in a group. And I think we'll have groups this side of the room. You can form a group. Can I have the front 2 rows? Could you be a group? Would you mind? And the back 2 rows, the boisterous ones, you will be the 3rd group, and I'll keep my eye on you because you sat at the back for a reason. You're going to lead the singing later on. So, what I'd like you to do in your group, could you spend the next 10 to 15 minutes? I'll see how it goes. I'll judge by the noise in the room. What I'd like you to do is read these 3 extracts and then have a conversation in your group. And what I'd like you to do is rank those 3 extracts in order from best to worst. The one that has the best level of reflection, choose first. Now, when it comes to the choice, I'd like you to spend very little time making your choice as a group. I'd like you to spend more time on the key questions. What was particularly noteworthy about each of these examples? What aspects would you commend? So what would you like to copy, for example? What aspects do you consider poor, and why? And did you have any difficulty deciding between one and the other? What was the difference that swung it one way or the other? And if you would disagree, why do you disagree with each other? So what I'd like in 15 minutes is to come back and get a ranking from each of the 3 groups to show which is the best example of reflection. Can we do this? I'm sure we can. Okay. I've got 1:45. I'll be back with you in 15 minutes. And if you wouldn't mind turning back into the room, we'll see where we are. Okay, now you can imagine when I work with appraisers, they have very strong... When I work with appraisers, they have very strong views on, what constitutes a well-reflected piece of work. I have to say that on reflection, they didn't find any of those to be brilliant examples. As I said to you from the outset, they are typical examples. I didn't choose them because they would demonstrate that the model worked. I chose them because they were pretty similar. And let's see if the model works. I asked you to rank them from 1 to 3. We have the 3 doctors, Dr. Shi, Dr. Genome, and Dr. Andy. So can I ask this first group, whose did you think was the best of the 3?
I think we would probably go for number 3, Andy.
Andy's the best? And who would...
Probably Shi. And then it's the microbiologist.
Okay, now this is interesting. Let's move to this group over here. Dr. Shi is number 1. Dr. Andy is number 1. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now this third group, it's up to you not to let the team down here. Okay. Who did you consider had the best? Dr. Andy. Okay. Who had the next best? Isn't it amazing? Isn't that amazing? Because if I'd shown you those 3 examples without the rubric, you might not have differentiated in the same way as what you did. And yet the differences are so subtle. They might just be a couple of extra words that are thrown into one as compared with another. And it does make a difference. Okay, it doesn't mean you have to write great scripts. We're not looking for an extended text. It's the quality, not the quantity. Okay, so that's reflection. Now, one thing that I will send you electronically, we didn't want to print it off for you today because it's 175 pages. No, it's 40 pages long, but it's a wonderful piece of work by Professor Arthur Hibble. He trains GPs, but this piece of work is generic, and it takes you through all of the modules that they train GPs in reflection. So if you want to go into in-depth understandings around the concept of reflection, take a look at that. I'm pretty sure if it were an online program it would have CPD points associated with it. It is quite a complex tool, but well worth looking at. So that's the first thing I wanted to do, is to urge you to think more reflectively. Now there's a second part to this exercise. Also in your pack you'll see another piece of paper that again looks like an academic paper. And this is called Personal Development Plans. Now, in my work with quality assurance, I have looked at the same number of PDPs as I did folders, and it wasn't pretty. I've got to tell you it wasn't pretty. I think if I were to take a reasonable judgment of what's going on in the landscape of appraisal and revalidation, I would have to say that we're getting the process pretty well right, because that's where the focus has been. Do you know what forms to fill in? Do you know when to attend a meeting? Do you know what forms to sign off at the end of it? That's all pretty good. But when it comes to what do I get out of this, it seems to be pretty poor. And I still can't work out why you would put all that effort into something and not get something out of it. It's got to be worth your while. And so therefore the PDP is the most important part. It's the so what. It's what do you get from this exercise. Now, from all those, and here's a sample of 266 individual evaluations. This is what I pulled out as the criticisms or the observations, if you like, and I fed it back to the appraisers. That first of all, thinking about PDPs, there should be two main sources for them. Those that respond to feedback from practice or governance. So if somewhere in your documentation you've provided information about a serious incident, and at the end of the form in your PDP there is nothing that relates to that in any way, shape or form, I, as the RO, would be asking the question, is this a complete appraisal? There must be some learning outcomes from those sorts of governance issues, and they must be reflected in the PDP. But there are also those that reflect the personal development aspirations. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? What are you aspiring to? What are your goals and aims? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to protect about what it is that you're doing? That forms the basis of this second half of your PDP planning. Now, there's a problem, and I think it's a process problem. One of the things that an appraiser has to do is they have to say at the end of the form, among 5 declarations, that progress has been made towards your last set of personal development planning. So when they're looking at this year's appraisal, they want to know how far you have progressed against your last PDP. And then they say, is it acceptable or not acceptable? Now, one of the things that tends to do is drive people into defensive practice, because they're saying, well, if I'm going to be held to account for the progress I make against my PDP, I'm not going to make it too difficult to achieve that. When I was in the military, we used to have appraisals, and we used a lot of wit and humour. And one of the favourite appraisal statements was, this officer continues to set very low standards and often fails to meet them. And this is something that I sometimes see in these PDP documents, setting low standards. You know, you might say, well, I'm going to go on a course to update my understanding of XYZ. But you were going to do that anyway. That's not something that's become an aspiration. That's not something that's come out of this meeting. This is something that is routine. And so what we want is for the routine things, the things you're going to do anyway, not to be the subject of your personal development plan, unless you can tie them into the conversation within the reflective statements that you write. So we don't want it to be a tick box exercise. We don't want your PDP to be stuff you're going to be doing anyway. We want it to be extraordinary and reflective. Okay, the next thing is the construction of the objectives. You have to bear in mind that someone else has to read these. They weren't part of the conversation, so they need to fully understand what it is you mean by go on a course. What course? When? Where's it going to be held? Why does it have to be in New York? Why does it have to be in Cairns during the film festival? You know, why does it have to be? And you have to be very clear about what it is that makes that the particular program for you. It's possible that when you're constructing a PDP that the program that you want to address hasn't yet been set. And so sometimes some people are saying, well, I won't say that I'm going to go on that course because the deanery or the college haven't yet set the program up. Don't worry about the precise detail if it's not there. Just say when it's going to be available. Now, issues often raised in appraisal commentaries don't lead to PDP objectives. I can give you a classic example of this. There's an appraisal meeting taking place. The appraiser says, I've noticed that you have not included the full scope of your work. And the appraiser quite innocently nods, well, I didn't know I had to. Okay, innocent mistake. Let's get through to the end of the form. There's no PDP objective saying that they're going to include it next time. It's an obvious error. It's a great gaping gap in information. There needs to be some action taken. We need to see it. We need to see an undertaking that that gap will be filled. Quite often people don't have information and they don't have a plan for gaining it. If, for example, you're in year 3 of your revalidation cycle and you haven't yet got any patient feedback, I'd be looking for a PDP to say how it is that you plan to get it next year. That's a reasonable thing to put in. Okay, we've talked about significant issues. There are areas where personal management and personal development overlap. You might be working for an organisation, for example, and the organisation might have a corporate plan or a departmental objective. Often it's included in job planning objectives if you work for a trust or an organisation. Let's say, hypothetically, you were in a surgical specialty and your specialty wanted to develop more theatre around laparoscopic work. You might say, well, that's a job planning objective. That's not a personal development objective. But there might be associated personal development objectives. For example, you might want to train some nurses to work with you. You might want to write a new pathway or a protocol. You might want to get involved in somehow implementing the corporate plan. So it does become a personal development objective. And so it should be in there. Okay. Over the page. I'm not going to go through all of these. But what we're looking for from your appraiser is that they also write sufficient notes and comments for us to understand where the objectives come from. We want there to be a story that flows through the appraisal documentation, from the supporting information to the discussion you had on it, the reflection you had on it, to the discussion you shared with your appraiser, to the PDP. What we don't want to see is that all the conversation is about how busy you are, and the outcome going to be you're going to go and get yourself busier by doing more things. That often happens. People go into their appraisal saying, I'm so overworked, I haven't got time to drink red wine. And at the end of it, they say, I'm going to take on this new role, I'm going to write a new protocol, I'm going to do all these things, these wonderful things. Well, when are you going to have the time to do that? Surely, if you've got not enough time, and that's an issue that might impact on patient safety, that's the first thing that has to be addressed in your PDP. And it's a case of having your job plan renegotiated. You know, it's going back to the source of the problem, not bypassing it and giving yourself a bigger problem. We've talked about the consequences of setting up a PDP objective and not achieving them. The biggest problem that appraisers have is mid-career doctors who are providing a satisfactory service and have no clinical governance issues. They're quite happy, quite safe, they just want to be left alone to get on with it. Those PDPs shouldn't be ambitious. They shouldn't be, oh, I want to learn all these new tricks, or I want to become involved in all this new exciting stuff. They should be saying how it is they're going to maintain their currency and competence. I'm going to continue. I want to protect the things that matter to me. That's what the PDP should be about. Okay, there are clear issues with the evaluation of supporting information where the doctor concerned has only partial medical practice or commitments. And this often happens for people in locum posts who might only spend a short period of time in any one particular place, particularly itinerant locums who move around a lot. And they'll say, well, I don't get to take part in, case review meetings, and I don't get to do the same level of quality assurance stuff as others do. And so the PDP should be about how you plan to meet that demand, how you plan to bridge that gap. And that should be your priority. Right, again, a rubric. Not a form to fill out. I do apologise for making these look like forms, because I think we've got enough forms in our lives. If someone said, I've got a shortage of forms, all they have to do is go along to the GMC. They can give you thousands of forms to fill out. We don't need more forms. What we do need, though, is a framework for our thinking. And this is the framework for thinking about PDPs. I'm not going to read it to you because you can read, but it covers those things that we just spoke about. Here's the exercise. I knew you were saying in your head, come on, Steve, tell us, what's the exercise? Well, here it is. This is the exercise. It's the same as the last exercise. You've got the same three doctors, Dr. Shi, Dr. Genome and Dr. Andy, and this is their PDP that came out of their documentation. Now, I accept you haven't seen all of the documentation, and I also accept you weren't at the meeting. Okay, but you have seen their reflection, and now you're seeing their PDP. What I want you to do is have a look at these PDPs, discuss them in your group, and now that you've warmed up to the idea of talking, perhaps it won't take quite so long to get the conversations going this time, so jump straight into the conversation and rank them. Best to worst, same as before. And have a conversation, the same as before, about that ranking. What's particularly noteworthy about each example? What aspects of them would you commend? What would you consider poor and why? What difficulties did you have deciding which was the best? And where do you disagree? Okay, 15 minutes. I'll come back to you at 25 to 4 and see where you are. So please, in the same groups, rank. I started by not being able to get this group to talk, and I finish by not being able to get this group to stop. Okay, thank you very much. You see, you missed that. You missed that whole bit, that gem that I just dropped then. You didn't get any of it because you... Okay, what I asked was, would you please rank 1, 2 and 3, the quality of the PDPs, using the rubric, using those things that we spoke about. So let's start with the group at the back this time. Whose PDP did you consider to be the best? Dr. Andy. And whose was the next? Dr. Genome. And the next, obviously, was Dr. Shi. Right, let's move to this group. Same again. And this group. Same again.
Almost the same. Although we thought that she was okay as well, so she and Genome were almost the same, but then we go with the majority.
So let's call them equal second then. Wow. Okay, now look at this, because this... It's the most important thing I'm going to say today. This is the interesting thing. The better the reflection, the better the PDP. I could have come in and said that in 30 seconds and we could all have gone home. But the fact that you realised it for yourselves and you reached it through consensus and that you agree is so important. If you put the effort into the reflection, the PDP will fall out the other end and it will be terrific. If you put very little effort, like Mr. Genome, then or Dr. Shi, then you come out with a pretty average PDP. It's that simple. So that was the key message that I wanted to get across to you today. Two things. You had a conversation. Now, conversation is exactly what an appraisal is. You come to some higher level of understanding through sharing your ideas with others, and that's exactly what you did in that exercise. So don't be afraid of appraisal. The second thing is, whilst that was an exercise, you've also got them to take away, and I've no doubt in my mind you might use them in some way to provide you with some kind of an example of what someone else has done. Because it's very lonely, this appraisal thing. You don't often get to meet with other people and share the ideas and what you've written and so on and so forth. So there's at least 3 examples, but I do ask you to keep them, as I say, confidential. Right. Now, here's the next thing I wanted to do, and it's not related to any of those documents, but you'll be pleased to hear it's another exercise. However, it's an exercise that I have to assert enormous control in order to conduct, because it's a very strict process. It's called the nominal focus group technique. That's the exercise we're going to conduct. I'll give you the background. I've been working with ROs, and I've asked them who pose for them the greatest problem. Who, of all the people they have to decide upon the revalidation, concerns them the most? Number 1, villain, are the non-engagers. People who, whether they're satisfactory or whether their practice is in one way questionable, it doesn't matter. They don't engage, and that is causing ROs the problem. Group number 2, the non-typical doctors. What do we mean by non-typical? These are the doctors who don't have a regular NHS contract, turn up to the same job day in, day out, and have complete engagement in the trust, quality assurance processes, information systems, so on and so forth. I think that's you. I think that's you. You pose ROs the second greatest of all problems. Okay, so if that's the case, then I want you to tell the ROs what the issues are that you see them, as you see them. Where do you see the problems in engaging with this process from your perspective? Okay, that's why we're going to do the nominal group technique. This is what it involves. I'm going to give you a batch of post-it notes. Would you take maybe 10 sheets and pass the rest along? 10 sheets of post-it note. You will need a pen. So if you haven't got a pen, could you please locate one? And you'll need something to lean on. Does anyone need a pen? No? Okay. Now, there is a deliberate sequence to this, and we're going to follow the sequence, as I said, with military precision. So please follow me. 27 years in the Navy, it never leaves you, I tell you. It's you know, I'm there, still happening. 8 o'clock is 8 o'clock. You know that because the bell rings. Okay, so you salivate. So you've all got some notelet pads? Yep. Okay, they're coming around now. Okay, we've still got some coming around. Just going to have to make sure everyone's got some. Right, now do we all have some? Yep, okay. And you have a pen. Right. I'm going to ask the question, and then I'm going to give you 30 seconds to write down as many answers to that question as you can. Only 30 seconds. So the trick is not to write a lot of words. Write 1 or 2 word answers to the question. Okay. Don't worry about whether it's not entirely clear, because the next stage of the exercise will clarify it for you. Don't worry if, when the 30 seconds is up, you come up with the best idea of all and your time's out, because someone else will have thought of it. I can guarantee it. So don't worry about that. So you'll have 30 seconds when I say the time starts now. Here's the question. From your perspective, regarding revalidation, What causes you the greatest problem? Okay, your time starts now. As soon as you've written an idea on a post-it note, tear it off, write your next idea on the next one. One idea per post-it note.
So one idea per post.
One idea per post-it note. That's why you've got 10. So tear one off and write the next one. Yeah. And stop. Right. Okay. Just for clarity, let's make sure we all have the same outcome here. You should have a separate answer on different post-it notes. If that's not the case, then just correct what you've done now. So if you've written 3 ideas on one, just cross 2 of them out and write the other 2 on separate notes. Okay. Whilst you're doing that, I would like everyone else to rank your answers. You might not have come up with the best answer first. So what I want you to do is give your best answer the letter A. So write A on it. The next answer, I want you to write letter B on it. The next, C, and so on. So you're self-ranking your answers to this question. Okay. We all there? Right. Now, the next stage of the exercise requires that you work as groups again. Now, you'll notice that I have cunningly placed some flip chart paper against the wall near your group. So this group, this is your sheet of flip chart paper. This group over here, that is your sheet of flip chart paper. This group at the back here, that is your sheet of flip chart paper. Okay. What I'd like you to do is turn towards your flip chart paper, move your chairs so that you're huddled around it, and then I'd like you one at a time to read off your A response and stick it on the paper. Just tear it off, stick it anywhere. It doesn't matter. We're not looking for any order or structure just yet. So the A response, read it out so the rest of the group know what it is, because you're all doctors and very few of you can write. So you need to say what it is. Okay. So say what it is so the others aren't guessing what your scribble is. So say what it is and then stick it on the sheet and then go round. So everyone has put their A response up first. Okay? And then do the B response and then the C response and keep going until all your answers are up. Okay. Has everyone put all of their post-it notes up? So all the A's, all the B's, all the C's, all the D's, all the E's. Just do them in the order. Go around the group. It doesn't have to be in any particular order. No poaching each other's boards. Okay, all the C's, all the D's, all the E's. Okay. Can I get order again, please? Yeah. I usually write it out and give them a copy so they can follow it in words. Okay, let's just take stock and see where we are. What I asked you to do is write your response to that question and then rank them A through to E. And then in each group, I wanted you to first put the A's up, then the B's, then the C's, then the D's, until you'd run out of responses. So each group now has a sheet in front of them that's got all the responses in all the rankings. So A, B, C, D here, A, B, C, D there, A, B, C, D here. I noticed there were a couple of tourists that were going around putting A's and B's on other people's forms, which is an interesting way of doing it. Doesn't matter. Whatever you've got in front of you now. Okay. Now, I'm going to get you to vote. I'm going to ask you to vote on which answer to that question you think is the best answer for you. It might be that someone else has said something in a way that you would prefer it said. Use different words. Or maybe they've come up with the idea that you didn't have. So before you vote, I want you to have a chance to argue why you think your idea is the best idea. So in your groups, gather round your form and spend the next 5 minutes campaigning for your idea to get all the votes. So make sure everyone's heard. 5 minutes, that's all you're going to get for this. Okay, can I get attention, please, back to the front? That's all the time we have for campaigning. Okay, I need your attention for the last part of this exercise. Okay, this is what I'd like us to now do. I'd like us to now vote. We've all had the chance to suggest what we think is of greatest concern. You've had a chance to campaign for your idea. You've had a chance to say, well, vote for mine because it's clearly the best. I have the best mind for these things. I'm the most eloquent, most poetic in the way I've turned the phrase, whatever it is that you've argued. So now you get a chance to vote. This is how I'd like you to vote. You can vote for 5, only 5, of any post-it note on your sheet. You can't vote for any post-it notes on anyone else's sheet, only your sheet, because you heard the argument. Okay, so you can vote for 5. Now this is how I want you to vote. You can give one post-it note 5 points. You can give another 4, another 3, 2 and 1. Okay, so the one you think is the best, give that the most points. The next best 4, 3, 2 and 1. You can only use 5 one time, 4 one time. You can only vote 5 times in all. Do you understand how to vote? So with your pen, write it on the note. And don't be swayed by anyone else. You vote with your own conscience here. I expect a Liberal Democrat candidate to win. So here we go. In your own time, go up to your form and vote 5 times. Okay, can I see where we are? Let me tell you what I plan to do. I'm going to take the work that you've done away, and I'm going to write it up, and then I'm going to send it back to you, so that you can see a copy of what it is that you have said causes you the greatest concern. But I'll also send it to Joanne so that she can have a conversation with her colleagues about what concerns you the most. And I'll also use it with the ROs that I work with so that they can be aware what you're saying concerns you the most. Can we just get a quick sense? Can I just have one person from each team just stand up at your board and read off for us the top scoring answers, maybe the top 3 scoring answers? So at the back, yep. Let's start with the one at the back.
Okay, 5 is lack of interest from NHS.
Lack of interest, okay.
Colleagues in my PDP and appraisal.
Okay, brilliant. Could we have this front one? Commitment? Okay. Must be males in that group. Failure to commit. We understand these things. Okay, and the next one?
Next one was gathering data.
Gathering data, yeah. And the last one, a third one?
Number 3 was time.
Time, okay. And this group over here, do you have your top 3 scoring answers? Anybody there? Time? Data collection. I see a theme recurring here. Evidence. Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much. As I say, leave them where they are. I'll collect them up at the end of the meeting. I'm now going to hand back to Syed, who's going to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you very much, Stephen. That was really very informative and very interactive as well. I hope you have also enjoyed and gained the necessary knowledge, which was the aim of this exercise for all of us attending here today. I'll now pass on the mic to Dr. Rahman Khan, and he's a consultant physician, a gastroenterologist based at Basildon University Teaching Hospital. So it's over to you, Rahman.
Thank you very much. That was very, very helpful, what I've heard today, and especially the reflections, etc. I'm afraid my talk is going to be very down to earth, and I'll go straight to the practical aspects about what you need to do to have a successful interaction and engagement with your appraiser. Okay, let me go back about 12 years ago when I went for my consultant interview. At that time, appraisal was very new. And the chief executive asked me, he said, is that disturbing you, me moving around? Yeah. Asked me, this new thing is coming around called appraisal. What do you think about it? My answer was, it doesn't matter what I think about it. I have to do it. And so I need to learn how to do it best. I got the job. I think she was. So let's get down to how to do it. I understand that almost all of you here are people who do locums. And over the last 6 months, I've had a chance to do appraisal for quite a few of people who have done long-term locum. So we will just restrict ourselves to that. So the practical aspects, the things that you have to do. Okay, next slide, please. Love it or loathe it, revalidation is here to stay. Okay, so let's see how we can do it. Now, what it needs basically, putting it down to a very simple level, is you need to do what you do, what have you learned, that is CPD, etc., and what do you plan to do, which is the PDP, which has been discussed. Next. And in each item, you need to do 3 things. You need to state the items, so give some description of what you do or what CPD you attended. Then you need to document it. I think we've all been very poor in having proof of what you do. Now, the proof doesn't have to be a certificate. It can be one of your colleagues certifying something that you have done, or you just keeping a record of what you've done. And I have to say here that it's very important that there should be no patient identifiable information in that record. You can use a black pen to cancel it out. For example, if you're keeping a clinic list, you can have the diagnosis, but you have to cancel out the names. Is that right? That would work. So it's very important that you document, and most important that we've talked about, you need to reflect on each item. And the quality of reflection will obviously increase as we go on. Going about a little bit more in detail. So basically, this is what the information that you will have to give. You'll have to give your personal details, which includes, for example, your phone number, your address, the size of your inside length of your trousers, whatever. You all have to give that sort of details there. Your job plan. Now, this is very difficult in the case of people who do long-term locums and go to different hospitals. If you are doing a 3-month, 6-month locum, that's slightly easier. If you're in regular job, you always have a job plan. But you have to make a job plan. So when you go to do a locum, say in a medical unit, you write down, I do a clinic on Monday morning, I do a ward round on afternoon. You have to write that down. So you have to make a job plan. So when you do your next job, you do that. If you're doing short locums, then you can have an overall job plan. I go and do locums in acute medicine, where I do from 9 to 5, XYZ, i.e. see patients, clerk them, present them if you're a junior, if you're higher off, make a management plan, etc. You have to give your roles, which is to say what things you are. So my role, I'm a consultant physician, I'm a consultant endocrinologist, I work in the private sector, and then I'm an appraiser, I'm a mentor to so many people. So those are my various roles that I do. You have to list them. And if you're a surgeon, you keep something called surgical log. As a physician, I don't know, know nothing about it. But you people probably do. So that's the bulk of the information of what you do. When you do your job plan and your roles, it is important that you reflect on it. This is some place where you have to do reflection. For example, it will simply be that I work as a clinician, I work as a general medical consultant. My job is very satisfying, but I see too many patients. And it would be nice if I could develop some skills in knowing a little bit about asthma. So that's the sort of things you can put in your job plan. Or in my job plan, I'm doing 3 clinics per week, and you can reflect that I think I'm not giving the best to my patients because I don't get time to do admin, and I need more time to do that. So you can reflect on whatever you do. So even as a long-term locum, you can say that I'm doing locums, I get to see too many people, I don't to see enough people, etc. What you need to show that you have thought about it. You're not on autopilot. You not come in the morning and you do that and then go away. Okay? So that's your personal thing. Then the CME points, which we all know we have to do. We'll go into detail. For that, you need to note down the event. You need to keep a certificate of some sort. Most CME events now give you a certificate. You need to collect that. There are some when there is no certificate. You can use the program, for example. If you have attended an event for which there was no certificate given, you can use the program. For example, when you go and do a grand round in your hospital, if you attend a grand round, there's no certificate given, but there's a flyer before that. So you can use that flyer to put into your portfolio. And I suspect personally, I don't know about appraisal, if you're 50% off or 60% or 2/3 of your events have got certificates and about 1/3 have got some other proof, I tend to accept that. But what is most important, you need to reflect on it. So there must be a degree of reflection, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Then the next bit is the quality improvement projects, which includes audits, discussions, patient projects. We'll come to that. Then communication, and that is by colleague feedback and patient feedback, which you obviously have to do. PDP, do I need to talk more about PDP? You are. Okay. And then the summing up. So this is how, these are the sort of information that you need to collect. Next slide. Now, in Capital Care and in my hospital, we both used Clarity. There are lots of and various commercial programs and some programs made by colleges, which are all roughly the same, different way of presenting all this information. We use Clarity here, and many hospitals are using it. When I was in the IT evaluation committee, along with Mr. Kabir was there, we actually invited all the companies to give a presentation. Some were very comprehensive and very detailed, some were too simple, and we personally found this one in between. For somebody who's not very good with IT, I found it easy to handle. And in the end, by a vote, we decided to accept this. Now, this is what it will look like. The first bit will be the GMC information. So this is your GMC number and your address, etc. Personal information, where you work, your MDS, if you are a member of Medical Defense Society, Medical Protection Society, that sort of things. Then your qualification. This you have to load, preferably. So your MBBS, your PACES 1, if you have done that, if you have done your MRCP, etc. You load that. And then membership. If you, I'm a member of the British Medical BMA, I'm a member of the British Endocrine Society. If you are a member of any organization, that doesn't include CND or the Labour Party or anything like that, but if you're a member of any medical-related organization, you enter that. Okay? So that's the bit about you. No, Alia, your Harrods membership card won't count in there, okay? Your roles. We have talked about that, what you do. Most people here, I think, Renis, your role is as a junior doctor doing whatever you do. If you have any teaching responsibility, for example, you would add that here. I think that's very unlikely. But many staff grade people or middle grade people, for example, do teach undergraduate students. So if you teach undergraduate students, yes, that's one of your roles. Job plan we have discussed. Last year's PDP, we talked about that, but unfortunately, so far, I haven't met anybody who had last year's PDP on electric formula. And in most cases, I think we end up saying, not for the senior people, but for this level, that this is the first appraisal. Surgical log, Mr. Rizvi will tell you what that is. I have no idea. I'm a poor physician. So we go to the CPD events, which you then have to enter. That will be the next slide. We'll hold that for a second. The quality improvement projects, significant events. If you've been named in any significant events, you have to give details about that. You have to tell us what the outcome is, but more important, you have to say what you have learned from it after reflection and what do you intend to do to make sure that it does not happen again. Colleague and patient feedback is structured. Complaints and compliments, again, have to be entered. If there is a complaint, again, you're required to reflect on it, write down your reflections, and give some sort of an action plan about what you intend to do to make sure it does not happen again. Additional areas of discussion occasionally arises. I suspect there are things like if you've got a physical disability and you can't do certain things, or you've got other issues, health issues, that sort of things can come into here. Pre-appraisal, and then proposed PDP, it is what you suggest. So you should come up with at least a few points, and then after discussion, it will end up as an agreed PDP. This will automatically happen once you have ticked various boxes, which I'll show you how we do. And then your appraiser will then summarize everything and then ask you whether you agree or disagree with it. And then you will have together a consensus where you come to it and agree to whatever needs to be said. Consensus, I always remember the description from Prime Minister Aman of Israel, who said, consensus is when a group of individuals agree to say collectively what none of them believe individually. So and then that will be the appraiser statement. Next. So there are a few things you have to have, without which you will not get an appraisal or be revalidated. One is you need to have some CME points. You need patient feedback and colleague feedback. You need to list all your clinical incidences, complaints, SI, etc. And if you don't do that, you're in trouble. So you must do that. And possibly, if you have done any, but one audit is a must. Coming to audits, there is some view that unless it's published in the New England Journal, it's not an audit, and you need to be in a job for at least 1 year, otherwise you can't get an audit. That's not right. You can always do audit, even in a 1-month job, in a 2 weeks job, you can do audits. We have some problem about a complaint coming from a patient. This is today, that they were not informed about the patients and nobody spoke to them. So our doctors are doing an audit on Monday, basically going through the notes and saying how many patients in the ward have had the doctors have discussed it with the relatives or not. No. Quick audit, it will take 2-3 hours to do it, and then on that complaint, we would have learned something from that complaint. And we don't know. We may find that we are not speaking to them, and we're going to record what we are so. So you can do this quick audits. What you need to show that you have taken an initiative, You have gathered the data, you have analyzed it, you've come to a conclusion, and then you've made an action plan. It shows your initiative. So the excuse that you can't do an audit because you are there for 3 weeks or 4 weeks is not valid. You can do it. Needs a bit of imagination. Next one. CME points. I asked a lot of people, especially who do long-term locums, why don't you want to do CME points? Well, it costs a lot of money. You have to go and pay for these, travel a lot. I have to take time off work, one person said, because if I do daily locum, if I don't do one day, I won't get 300 quid. So it's a loss of money for me. Well, there's no fixed provision in my job. And one person said, keeps me away from the family. Tough luck, we have to do it. Whether these excuses are there. This is your profession, your job. This is how you earn money. So you have to spend some money just like we do for insurance. Next slide, please. Now, when I look at the CME points at somebody who's done long-term locums, and again, for my trainees, juniors, etc., I look at 3 or 4 things. There should be a good mix of clinical and non-clinical. So non-clinics are things like conflict resolution, communication, information governance, the importance of maintaining records, how to break bad news. All those things fall into the non-clinical bit. I think a mix of 20 to 30% non-clinical and 70% clinical is very reasonable. I don't know whether Mr. Kabir, and I don't think the GMC has any guidelines on it, but what is important is that there should be a reasonable mix with at least something on non-clinical things. Many non-clinical courses are available online, and you can do that there. There should be something about the specialty and something general. This especially happens with people who are in specialties like cardiology or endocrinology or they tend to do all the courses related to their specialty. And I think it's a good idea, if you are a specialist in orthopedic in feet, feet do normally come attached to a whole human being. So you need to know a little bit about, what is simple things like diabetes and how to manage fever, what is pyrexia, etc. So and a little bit about antibiotics, etc. So you can, I would say I would give 75% to this, but I expect about 25% of the medical bit to be something more general. Online lectures and lectures that you've attended. I did a locum on somebody, appraisal on somebody. She had 50 points, all online. I'm afraid I refuse to accept that. Because I think that one expects them to go and have some interaction, not just sit in a darkened room in the evening and just play with the computer and get points. I use the word play a little flippantly, but I think the interaction that you get when you go to a session like here where people are interacting tells you what others do, how others behave, what their views are. I think that's very important in medicine now, and I think one of the things we are promoting, I think as a GMC also, and everybody expects, is that people will interact. The time when you thought that you could just do your little things in a corner is gone now. So expect both to happen. Royal and non-royal, in here in UK, if you have something royal attached to it, it's always fantastic. So going something done by Royal Colleges, Royal Society of Medicine, Royal this, Royal that is always useful, and I'll talk about that. Okay, money. There are lots of free courses available, actually, which you can attend. Next slides. Yeah, that's also important. Yeah, sorry, I should have entered that. Thanks for reminding me. It's done internally in the hospital. There are CME points you can get regionally by going into your neighboring hospital. And then there are national and international conferences. And I think it would be very nice that you do at least some courses which are regional or national, which are done at Royal Colleges. This is, for example, the teach-ins which are held on the first Tuesday of every month at the Royal College of Physicians. They are free of charge for 2 hours, and they cover one topic. Can I show the next one? I'll just show you that hematological. So 4 topics covered by eminent specialists in that subject, half an hour each. In the evening, you can do that free of cost. Things like that are available. Next slide. No? Yeah. I took my whole team last month. Yeah, but even if you don't pre-register, if you turn up there, nobody will tell you anything. You just turn up there. And it's normally geared up at SHO levels, people who are going to give their membership. It's very useful, it's very available, and you get free coffee and biscuits. Actually, when I used to go, it used to be sherry. But those days are gone. When we were preparing for Shahzaman, we used to go together. I think I and Shahzaman, we prepared for our membership together. We did combined studies, so I remember from those days. And then there are other things that happen. For example, this 2-hour free cost, this company does it. If you go online, etc., you'll find many companies are doing this, and they get their advertisement in different ways, etc. So you don't even have to cost that much. Next slide. Okay. Now, how do you then enter that? So this is very good. This is a real one, taken one of my colleagues. So I attended an acute general medicine conference there and there. It offered a visionary approach to medical training. It offered solution to the challenges. It included 80 practical sessions, 11 dedicated, etc. I got to ask questions from experts, and it was a great networking opportunity. So this person has reflected upon it also. So that, next slide. And further reflection, the seminars I attended were very valuable. I picked up training. How does it relate to the practice? It gave me more confidence to deal with acute illness. What I particularly found useful was COPD. The session on use of new anticoagulants was informative, etc., etc. I was able to tailor the day according to my educational need, and it gave me invaluable knowledge and helped me to address. So this is one example of reflection on that CME point. So that's the sort of thing you need to do. Next, please. I won't go into patient feedback. It is usually done by, if using Clarity, they send a pack out to whoever is the revalidation officer in your hospital.